All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Xavier Duran. I am the arts programming, I apologize, arts, culture, and education programming librarian for the Lisle Library District. Uh, Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are in what's called webinar mode, which means only myself and our panelists are the only ones with an active camera and microphone. So we will not be able to hear or see you. So if you're still in the middle of dinner or in your PJs, not to worry. We are the only ones with an active camera and microphone. Because we are the only ones with an active camera and microphone, you will need to post any questions in the Q&A section down below, and we will get to questions during and after the program. With that said, joining us this evening in celebration of LGBTQ History Month is a couple of individuals from Gerber Hart Archives and Libraries in Chicago. We have Erin Bell, Operations Director, and Jen Dentel, Programs and Social Media Coordinator. So please help us in welcoming our panelists.
All right. Thank you so much, Xavier. My name is Erin, and we're really happy to be joining you today to give you a little tour of kind of the back of Gerber Hart, the goings on of our library and archives. Jen is going to be leading the tour, and I will be kind of in the library. I'll be watching the chat, and in between, when we're in the different spaces, the library and the archives, I'll share some facts about Gerber Hart and our history. Just a quick little note. I mean, we're the Midwest LGBTQ library with a pretty strong focus on Chicago materials. And our library is open to the public Wednesdays and Thursdays from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Fridays from noon to 4, and Saturdays from 10 to 4. We have a circulating library that's behind me that Jen is going to walk through shortly. And we also have 2 full archives. We accept donations, and people can come in to do research during our open hours. So with that said, Jen, take us away.
All right. Thanks, Erin. So yeah, I'm just going to be walking around giving you a little tour of our space, but thank you, Xavier, for having us. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type it in the chat so we can help answer those questions on the tour. So we're starting off in the library. So I am going to switch the camera view around in 1 second.
Oh, looks like you are on mute.
Oh man, I'm sorry. We are all in the same room, so we we thought we were doing okay. I'll start over. Oh my God. Zoom 101, right? Okay, this is Erin. Going to say again. This is our circulating library. So this is books all about LGBTQ, all focused on LGBTQ issues. So whether that's fiction or poetry or comics or just history, we would have it here. We also have a little pop-up exhibit with our buttons. Oh, and I'm in the background too. This is very odd. So yeah, as we go back, there's an area for you to search our catalog, to search our early newspapers, and then a small reference section as well. And then right here, so these are some bubble heads that were by an artist named Leek that used to hang in a bar in Chicago called Roscoe's, which still exists. But we have here a few different ones. There's Gloria Swanson and Sylvester. And then as we go around the corner, you'll see we have a lot of VHS tapes, which yes, If you have a VCR, you can check them out. We also have DVDs as well that you can check out from the library and music. And then this section all along here is all children's books and YA, so our juvenile section. And there's a few just rotating exhibits of t-shirts. You might recognize some very old posters of reading at your library featuring different queer icons like Tim Gunn. So yeah, this is our circulating library. But what I will do now is I'm just going to pause and I'm going to move over to our special collections. And I will turn it back to Erin.
All right, so yes, this library, everything in our library is donated. We do not have a collections budget in any way. We are definitely a small organization. So we are reliant on people bringing in unwanted books, things that they're just trying to clear their shelves. And we check to make sure if we have it or not. And if the materials that are donated to us either are not LGBTQ or are something that we already have, we will actually set it aside and save it for our next book sale. We just had a book sale a couple weekends ago that was very, very well attended and very successful. So please keep your eyes open for our next book sale, probably later in the spring.
Yeah, that's definitely, book sale is a highlight for me. At least that's where I've gotten a lot of my own personal books. But we're on the north side of Chicago. If you are in town, please come to visit. We're up in the Rogers Park neighborhood. Right now I am standing in special collection. So the temperature has dropped by about 20 degrees in here. This is all temperature controlled. This is where we keep a lot more of our rare materials. So when we think about books that were published before a certain age, books that are out of print potentially, signed books, and then a lot of our periodicals and newsletters as well. So anything from larger publications like The Advocate, which is an LGBTQ publication. There's also a Chicago newspaper called the Windy City Times, all the way going back to the first lesbian periodical in the US, The Ladder. We have newsletters belonging to groups like Woods Women News is a small newsletter that we have. We have one that's a Chicago LGBTQ swimming group. We have their newsletter here as well. But I will show you. So right now we're standing here. So talking about newsletters and periodicals, we have lots of file cabinets of those, as well as they go on beyond as well. And then just heads up, you might see some erotica when you're in here. I know that I'm on an iPhone, so the camera's not going to be too explicit, but just so you might know that. The most striking part of our special collection you might see is this tongue, which stands right above our poster collection. So this tongue used to hang in a bar called Carol's Speakeasy. And Carol, or Mother Carol, was the drag queen who ran the bar, and she was known for being very loud, hence why they had a large mouth as their logo. Fun story is when this was donated to us, the tongue was actually black because of all the cigarette smoke that was in the bar. So it had to be cleaned. I don't know if they used a toothbrush or something more industrial, but it got cleaned. So that hangs right above a large file cabinet that has posters that are stored flat so that they're not creased. We also have framed posters here. And then as we go back, you see some rarer cassette tapes, rare books, periodicals, something that I'm very fond of, and I'll try to go slow so that we don't get any motion sickness here. But we have a large collection of LGBTQ travel guides. So these are, going back, this one, for example, is from 1967. So what this was travel guides where you could look up the city where you were in and see where the safe places were to travel, where the places to, cruise and date people would be. And it was a really good resource for people, particularly in times where you couldn't publish this information. Now, going down this aisle, we do have a lot of erotica. So this would be our smaller print erotica, like pulp novels, lots of VHS tapes. And then if you go here, all of these gray boxes. So this is all pre-Stonewall erotica. So what that means is erotica that existed before 1969. So a lot of that is things like muscle magazines, things that you could kind of get away with publishing at the time. And then more VHS tapes down to the left. And then all along the outside, we have print erotica as well. So a lot of fun, rare, special things in here. But definitely the periodicals get a lot of use from researchers because it's a great way to tell a little kind of slice of life from the day. But what I will do now, I'm going to go back on mute and I'm going to walk down to our archive. So I will turn it back to Erin.
Thanks, Jen. So yes, our special collections, this is right across the hall from our library. It is, as Jen said, something that is used almost every time we're open, actually. We have a lot of researchers come in. Most of our periodicals in the special collections you can find through our catalog, just the listing of, the fact that we have them. So a lot of people who are writing articles or books, or perhaps are working on like a master's thesis or a dissertation, will come in to look at those collections and to refer to those papers. Let's see, everything in there is print. We do have some newspapers that are pre the 1975, I believe. We do have some digitized as a big PDF that you can come look at in person. But for the time being, there are some of those newspapers that are they are digitized on the actual newspaper website, the like Windy City Times. They will have a lot of those articles digitized. But for our collection, that's definitely an ambitious someday project to be able to digitize things that are not available online in a digital format.
It's definitely a lot of things we really want to do, and there's a lot of projects. So if you know anyone in Chicago that wants to volunteer, please do send them our way. So I am standing now in actually my personal favorite part of Gerber Hart. So this is our archives. So this is where we keep, again, temperature controlled. We keep a lot of the personal papers that belong to businesses and individuals in Chicago and the Midwest that were really active in the LGBTQ community. So in here we have everything from a collection that belonged to Miss Tilly, the dirty old lady of Chicago, who was a drag performer who performed from the 1940s through the 90s. We have records that belong to the Gay Games organization, Front Runners, which is an LGBTQ running organization. And then what I'll start with, so I'll do just kind of a overview so you can see, there we go. So we're in the archives. You can see it's quite a large space and it goes back, we have several aisles full of archival boxes. So this entire wall over here, so all of these boxes, this is all belonging to one man called Bill Kelly. So Bill Kelly was an activist in Chicago and he was involved in all sorts of organizations, whether it was Mattachine Midwest, all the way through helping organizations like some bisexual activism groups, some transgender activist groups. He did a lot and he kept absolutely everything. So there is a beautiful record of his activism as well as the LGBTQ scene in Chicago from probably what would you say, Erin, like the 50s through the early 2000s, 60s?
Oh,
somewhere
absolutely
around there.
spanning 40 to 50 years.
Yep.
And you're not kidding when you say he kept everything. I was looking through it a bit this past weekend and literally newspaper clippings of just anything and everything LGBTQ.
It's really an incredible resource. And I know that researchers are going to find a lot of different ways to use it. And then just going back, so I'll go back just to show you kind of what one aisle looks like. And there's all sorts of treasures in here. Each box, so this is the Miss Tilly box that I was talking about. It's just one box. And then we have kind of a smattering of other rare materials here. So something that you might recognize, we have a Rosie O'Donnell Barbie doll. So LGBTQ board games. This is something I really enjoy. This is an artist named Kathy Opie at the Museum of Contemporary Art, LA, made a deck of cards called the Dyke Deck, which is pretty incredible. But there's all sorts of things here. So we have, these are all comics in these boxes. We also have zines, we have pamphlets. These are VHS tapes again, but this is more home movies. These are recordings of pride parades, LGBTQ television shows. We have a whole range of LPs and vinyl collection here. And then slides. And this is in progress. So you might tell that we're running out of space. This is stuff that we need to process. We are stacking things a bit high, but we are running out of space because there is so much important material that we are keeping track of. And then one other thing I want to show you, these are t-shirts. I will say that our interns this past summer did an incredible job going through all of our t-shirts, steaming them, photographing them, and cataloging them. So we have a really good record of them as well. And then lastly, in this area, and I definitely, if anyone wants to see inside any of these boxes, please let me know. But these are smaller archival collections. There's some really wonderful ones. This one is a particular favorite. This is the Great Angling Lesbian Society, or GALS, which was a lesbian fishing group that existed in Chicago. But we're really proud of all these collections. They're very personal collections. You know, they tell a real story about Chicago LGBTQ history, Midwest history. And, you know, it's special. I don't think you find any place quite like this. We're definitely one of the biggest repositories for LGBTQ history in the world. And we have a really special collection. So I'd love to hear if any of you have questions, please let me know. I don't know, Erin, if you have a favorite archival collection that you want to talk about, or but there's a lot of treasures in here, and I'm happy to show inside any boxes or anything you want to see. Just please let us know.
No questions yet. I know that where you're standing right now, like those smaller boxes, that's one of the first projects that I worked on, was going through those smaller boxes. And there are definitely favorites amongst those. I will say, I think one collection that I talked about with you was the Toots Lorraine collection. Is very fun to look through.
I'll walk over there. Yeah, this is, do you want to tell? Okay, let's see.
Well, I mean, I actually don't know a ton about Toots Lorraine, except that she was a drag queen, and that we actually have, it looks like at least three shelves, maybe four shelves of her materials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes, so there's up here, you can see there's a lot of hats, there's boas, there's feathers, there's
Right.
sequins. I know she made a lot of this herself. These are a few more outfits here. But yeah, a lot of it is like Mardi Gras themed. But yeah, she's incredible. I don't know a ton about her either, but her clothes were phenomenal.
And I mean, that is one of the things about being at Gerber Hart, is there are a lot of these collections that we don't know a lot about the people in them. What we know is what's in the box. And I know you mentioned Miss Tilly earlier. That's somebody that there's just very little actually known about her outside of her work. And just this past weekend, we were having a conversation about the kind of the investigation that can go on in archives. And there's just so many treasures to be found and rediscovered in an archive.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, and if you want to learn more, please, we have a lot of online resources at gerberhart.org. And we also have a podcast. So it's an 8-episode podcast called Unboxing Queer History. And it goes through, most of the episodes do center on an archival collection, though a couple of them are more generally focused about Gerber Hart. But thanks, Erin. It's a great way to kind of take a deeper dive into these collections, especially if you can't make it out to Chicago. But there's a lot of history in here, and there's definitely a lot of interest. We have volunteers that are working through processing a lot of these collections now. You may have some of this history as well. You know, thinking about a lot of this history came to us from attics and basements of people who had lived through certain times or had friends, you know, and photos of them with their friends. And this is all, you know, history that we collect. I do want to go to the exhibit room to show people that. Any questions yet, or is it?
No questions yet. So
all right,
please onward to the exhibit room.
I will walk on over. I'm going to change it so it's not on my face as I walk.
And I'll just speak to kind of what Jen was saying about how a lot of our collections are processed by volunteers, donations that are given to us, whether they're material like book donations or whether they're donations for our archive. This is something that volunteers have the chance to go through and learn and develop those skills, and that we are very reliant on volunteers. I myself was a volunteer for about 4.5 years before I took on the role of operations director, and it's just been such a wonderful experience. And Jen was also a volunteer for a long. How long were you a volunteer before you had a paid position, Jen?
I want to say about 6 years, because I've been here just over 8 years at Gerber Hart, and I've been here very part-time staff, just over 2 years. So, but yeah, volunteers are incredibly important to Gerber Hart. Sorry, there's a bit of an echo in this room, but this is our exhibit room. I just wanted to show you. So, speaking of volunteers, our volunteers help curate. They do curate these exhibits. Usually, it's a team. Anywhere from 3 to 5 volunteers work on exhibits for 6 months up to a year. And they put together these exhibits that we have openings for, and then we have follow-up programs. So this one is called Decoded: Surviving the Law as a Sexual Deviant. And it's all about different ways that LGBTQ people in Chicago have kind of navigated the law, whether that's creating spaces for themselves outside of the law when it was illegal to be gay at any point, before there was any sort of decriminalization, before there were, when there were bar raids happening, or whether it was, conflicts that were happening with the law as well. So it's a really interesting exhibit. Just a warning that it does deal with a lot of violence against LGBTQ people. So there is a, content warning when you walk into the exhibit, so you know what you're going to expect. But I will just show what it looks like and a couple close-ups. So our exhibit room, so we have a few different cases, and there's a lot of information here. So there's a lot of information about different periods of time in Chicago. There's a lot of materials from our archive on display. The curators used this awkward pillar that we always have to negotiate. They used it as a place to put personal ads from our periodicals that they found. We also have a fun interactive exhibit that features the hanky code, that you can lift up these hankies just to learn more about what they actually mean. There's text behind each one that will tell you. Some really beautiful pictures of the Belmont Rocks, which was a space in Chicago that existed from the 60s through the 90s, which was a kind of a safe place where a lot of LGBTQ people would gather and celebrate with each other. So these switch out fairly frequently. I would say, well, not fairly frequently, I would say about once or twice a year, these will switch out and we'll do openings. So please definitely check gerberhart.org and you'll be able to see when we have exhibits coming up, but they are a lot of fun, and it's a great way to learn a lot about a specific time period in Chicago.
Yeah, gosh, I think we just had the event, debut exhibit event for Decoded back in the end of July. So it's been up for about 3 months. And like Jen said, they tend to switch out once or twice a year. I think obviously the pandemic affected a lot of our services and programming and just our general operations. And so our last exhibit was up for probably almost 2 years, over 2 years. Yeah, and it was a really big event. It's really, really fun when we get to have new exhibits. And that is honestly one of the goals of being here and getting to interact with these materials, is getting to see them used, and getting to see the projects that people come up with, and getting to see all the researchers and artists and students coming in to look at our materials and just figuring out new and interesting ways to take this information that we are storing and preserving and kind of transform it, and to learn and to spread awareness of the materials that we have and the history that in many ways has kind of been overshadowed or forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we all feel really strongly about making this history accessible to everyone. We are a community archives. We are a community space. We exist to serve the community. So this is not a place where, you have to have a certain credential to access materials. This is for everyone, and we want people to use and access the materials. I did see, it looks like there was a question. Thank you. What is the question?
It is, where do you get your funding from, and are you a non-for-profit? Yes, we are a nonprofit. Our funding comes from donations from members of the public, and it comes from grants, and it comes from fundraiser events that we host. So like we just had a book sale and we raised a few $1,000s there. We are constantly applying for grants. We are just trying to find fun and interesting ways to basically ask for donations and also, see ways that we can give back to the community and um, spread awareness of our existence, because a lot of people don't know that we exist, which is a little sad, but also exciting when people do learn that we exist and they come to our location and then their eyes get big as saucers when they see how huge our archives are and just the wealth of information we've gathered since we opened our doors in January of 1981.
Yeah, I think it's been definitely 40 years of existing as a nonprofit. It's very, there's been some really difficult times just in terms of funding and surviving, and a lot of it has depended on the community. It's depended on volunteers that have cared a lot and put in a lot of time, a lot of hours, a lot of money as well to keeping us afloat. We're in a great place now, and I think we're doing a lot of really exciting things, and we're definitely growing. So our hope is that we can keep getting more funding to be able to continue to grow, get more staff and things like that, so that we can keep existing for many more years to come.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that, Jen, that you and I actually are co-creators of a podcast that just came out this year, which has helped to spread awareness of our institution's existence and several of our wonderful collections, which has then in turn brought in a lot more media attention, as well as research interest and like tour requests from schools and programs. It's been really, really great.
Yeah, it was definitely the podcast and being approached by Ari Mejia, who's the other co-creator on the podcast, who is a sound artist, has done incredible work. Being able to work with her, and we got a grant in order to be able to do that. It was a small grant, but it allowed us to put together this this piece that really showcases a lot of our collections. So it's been wonderful seeing that get attention. That's definitely, we're always looking for attention, social media, all the presences. But yeah, it's been a very good year. Any other questions from anyone? I don't know, Xavier, if you have anything burning, please don't hold back.
I'm very interested in when were I believe it was the lesbian anglers in from their official assumption to what was their how long did that group run for? Is it still active?
It is sadly not still active. I don't have an exact dates for you. I believe that it's online. So on the episode about them, because we did do an episode for the podcast about them. It was in the 90s. It was two friends that founded it that really wanted to start a fishing group. But their collection, it's so small, but it is incredible what's inside there. So they have a lot of photos of fishing trips that they took around Chicago. My favorite part is they have newsletters, and the newsletters is just them just razzing on each other, and very much like just poking fun about like if someone didn't catch a fish, or like if something happened at a campsite. And it's very sarcastic and funny, and it's great reading through them. We actually were able to track down the two women that founded them, and we just had a great conversation with them about why they love fishing so much, how they founded it, and just some great stories. And what I loved is afterwards, one of the women sent more photos to us, and she wrote on the back of all the photos to know who was in them. It's like, oh, this is so and so, and she didn't want to touch the fish that came off the fishing hook, or this was Claire's first fish that she caught. And it's a lovely, like, deeply personal collection, and it's warms my heart. But yeah, I want to say 90s, probably for about 10 years, but I would need to double check that. Yeah, it should be online.
Yes, I shared the link to the episode, so people can look that up. I also see just kind of a cool, more of just a general comment about the video and someone just expressing a desire to visit and see the library. So yes, please do. It is definitely, I'm so thankful that we can give a tour here and give a, show what the space looks like, but it is really, like, it is so much bigger in person. And obviously when you are able to come in person, we can give you books and show you books and show you like actually open up boxes and show you things from queer history. It's very exciting. And yeah, just the podcast was a lot of fun to work with, to work on. And as Jen said, like, we were able to talk with the people who were part of these exhibits and part of these collections, and kind of bring that little bit of history back to life, and spark new conversations, and tell new stories. And I think that that's something very exciting about the possibility and potential of a library and an archive.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the comment on the Q&A. I am sorry about the shaky vertical filming. We are operating off of a phone right now. We are trying to upgrade our technology, and what we should be able to have more proper, hopefully, equipment for doing things like this. I totally understand watching the shaky video can make me nauseous sometimes. So sorry about that. Yeah, I feel like if you are interested in our collection, please look. The other thing that we have online is our archival collection guides. So if you are, you may be surprised by some of the materials that we have, and or not. I know when I started here, I was very surprised by how far back a lot of the materials went. I didn't realize. And this has been a really wonderful space to learn a lot more and get more context about history in Chicago. But, if you see something in our archives that you want to see, you can always, email us ahead of time that you want a collection pulled for you, or you can come in and ask to see it. Either is fine. But we have a really incredible collection, and we would love for you to use it. So please do come visit.
Yeah, and I should just add that you don't have to pay money to come visit us either. We are open to the public. We are these archival materials. I mean, there might be some things like film you just have to wear gloves with, and we don't let you have drinks on tables with materials, and you can't use pens. Like, there's some little rules if you've never handled archival materials before, done research with archival materials before. But anybody can come in and look at these things, and there are so many things to look at, and it's just great. And we have a lot of people who are return visitors, looking at our archival collections, and then some people actually just become volunteers themselves, which is really cool.
Was there a recent acquisition that sort of took you back that was incredibly surprising, especially with what you have in your collection, that even with what you have in your collection, it was still surprising, yet a wonderful addition to the collection?
That's a really good question. I mean, I'm not here every single day that we're open, but recently, we got a couple really interesting collections that I am still working through processing for our archives. One which was someone's personal correspondence, and it's actually from within the last decade. So it's a lot of letters written back and forth between a young queer couple. And I mean, they mentioned that they were no longer together, but it was just a documentation of a relationship, of a queer relationship from within the last decade, that we don't really have many materials that showcase that. It's also, I mean, it's also notable, I think, for a relationship nowadays, that they chose to communicate through writing letters back and forth. I would think a lot of communication now would be more with texting and emailing and messaging through social media platforms. And so it's just, that's a cool collection. And I guess fittingly, it was given to us in a shoebox. And that's a really cool collection that I'm excited to process. It is going to be one where the donor is remaining anonymous. Any identifying information is going to be removed or restricted. And then we also just recently had a collection within the last 2 or 3 weeks that included an enormous jar of matchbooks. And these are just matchbooks from various gay bars, gay and lesbian bars in Chicago, some probably out of state too. And this was just this person's collection, and they'd go to a bar and they'd grab a matchbook and they'd throw it in this. And it is a sizable jar. I think someone was thinking about trying to play a game of like, guess the number of matchbooks with it. But we actually do have other matchbooks in our archives somewhere. I have to find them. And this will be a really fun addition. Yeah, we have, I mean, as Jen pointed out, we have a lot of materials in our special collections in our archives that are not just paper materials, they are items. Someone donated like, well, we have a pretty sizable pin collection, obviously. People have donated even just like paper cups from like events that had logos of businesses on the sides of them. And we kind of have to pick and choose sometimes what we keep and what we don't keep, especially if it's related to something from the Midwest. That's kind of the priority of the things that we collect, but some things are just too good to pass up.
Like the other like big items I'm thinking of, we have trophies as well from some of the local like sporting leagues here. A recent collection that we got that was, I actually haven't seen it yet, but someone was posting on Facebook that they wanted to donate or get rid of. They had a lot of collections of eroticas. Like I think it was it 8mm or they were erotica that they had. It was gay erotica. And someone commented and they said, hey, this should go to Gerber Hart, and tagged us, which I was like, oh, this is great. Someone's including us in this. And so I was able to message the person and he was like, yeah, absolutely. If someone can pick it up, done, it goes to you. And he donated several projectors as well. So we had a volunteer who has become like our erotica specialist, and he was able to go out and pick this up from this guy's house. And I just love that someone thought, this should go to a good home where where it can be accessed and other people, people can research, or, this belongs in an archives, or this belongs in a museum, as Harrison Ford would say. So yeah, that was nice that we had been remembered online. That was very nice.
Does anybody have any other questions for us? I will also say that we have a lot of events ourselves, and in the past we used to have a book club. We used to have like game nights where we would bust out some of those fun games from the archives and actually play them. But a lot of the programming that we do that is really successful is collaborative events like this. It's when we work with other libraries and institutions, universities and colleges, and other LGBTQ businesses in the city that we're able to just kind of mutually support one another. And that is one of my favorite ways of doing outreach and of spreading awareness that we exist and that we are here for the community. first and foremost. So if you have an organization or that you work for, or if, let's say, you think maybe you would like to, I don't know, collaborate with us on some kind of event for your work or something, like these are all possibilities. And we are just always very excited when a new challenge arrives of creating a new kind of a program or giving a talk or something. We're happy. I think both of us are very happy to talk about Gerber Hart at length.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us, Xavier. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes. And if there aren't any other questions, I'll go ahead and let our incredibly busy panelists head out for the night. I'll go ahead and, as you can see in the chat, there are links to the archives as well as to the Gerber Hart website. Again, thank you, Erin. Thank you, Jen, for making yourselves available and for showcasing the collection. Right. All right. And thank you, everyone. And have a great evening.
Good rest of your evening too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye.